She had a surprised look and slapped his arm away playfully. Sheepishly. Chào các bạn, và video ngày hôm nay mình sẽ đọc một confession trên mạng. Và lý do mình đọc nó bởi vì mình thấy câu chuyện này là câu chuyện khá là tởm. Và mình muốn các bạn cũng trải qua những cái cảm xúc kỳ lạ mình cảm thấy khi đọc những cái lời thú tội nó kỳ lạ như vậy. Thế nên mong các bạn hãy tận hưởng video này với một phong thái lạc quan và bình tĩnh. Và đừng công kích mình bởi vì video này mình làm không biết gì hơn ngoài giải trí. Cảm ơn các bạn. A pervert's dark confession. Allow me to preface this by saying that I am aware that throwaways are discouraged, but this is too embarrassing for me to associate with my already anonymous primary. But I need to get this out. For far too long, I've been living in shame, and it has to be the time to stop. I'm hoping that by putting this out there, even though anonymous, this will have instilled enough shame knowing that there are real people out there that know my dirty secrets. So here it goes. I am a huge pervert. For 10 years, I have been living in shame with what my prepubescent self did, and what my current self will sometimes occasionally feel. This very deep and very dark issue I have centers around my sister, and actually goes back as far as I long can remember. It is sexual in nature, but my actions predate before I had the slightest inkling of what sexuality was, so I guess I will start at the beginning. I do not have a lot of early childhood memories. A lot of people I have encountered in everyday life seem to have much deeper remembering of their childhood than I. Many seem to remember as far back as 2 years old, and my sister-in-law claims to have a memory going back to 1 year old, but I call BS on that one. Anyway, most of my early childhood memories is around when I am in kindergarten. I had a few fragments of memories here and there, such as throwing up in a trash can and being very embarrassed, not understanding why my teacher was so upset at a classmate who spent an extra 10 minutes at recess picking dandelions for her. My first girlfriend. All of these are split-second snapshot memories. There is, however, one involving my sister that I remember clear as day. In our kindergarten class, some days class would get out at noon. I have no idea why, but that was just something that was part of the schedule. I believe it was every Friday, but it's rather inconsequential, so I won't spend much time on it. The day of this memory had to have been one of those half days for me, as my memory starts with us picking her up from school after the rest of the grade cleared out. I was eating my half peanut butter and jelly sandwich snack that I decided not to eat during our class's snack time, and instead apparently wanted to eat in the car. On a side note, I would like to keep my sandwich in a Ziploc bag and press it very thin so the bread would get all mush and take on the jelly flavor. My sister climbs in the back of our red van. She was an amazing gymnast and had to be somewhere for something or other. My mother was in a hurry. I looked back to show her what I had done with my sandwich, thinking it was one of the most amazing things I had done in my life to that point. And I see her, stripping down, buck naked, and changing into her white and purple leotard. She was only 2 grades ahead of me, so it was not as if she was developed or anything, and she used her hands to cover her lower privates. But I was mesmerized by this. I don't know if it was out of the oddity of the situation or if there were deep-seated feelings way back then. But I couldn't take my eyes off the situation until my mom got my attention again. My memory ends at this. Writing this story reminds me a memory fragment that I believe to be the earliest one I possess. My sister and bathing together in the bathtub, and my butt got a scratch from our drain. This is purely non-sexual, but it does make me stop and think, looking back on things now. Fast forward a year or two, and our family was at the height of our prosperity. My father was in the midst of a non-violent crime that we had no knowledge of, and was making quite a bit of money from this. He was self-employed, so I didn't think anything of it. To be honest, I was still young enough, probably 7 or 8, that I didn't have a full understanding of money yet. One spring, we decided to put in an above-ground pool for that summer. While it is true that my father was involved in illegal revenue earning act, we were still by no means should be viewed as wealthy. We were just a little better off than most of our smaller rural community. This above-ground pool was just a simple trashy-looking blue oval, but a really cool deck was built around it. I remember filling up the pool with a garden hose, and the disappointment I experienced when I realized how long it was going to take to fill. It felt like all day, and it very well may have been. But that memory has eluded me. Skip forward what I think about a month or so. It is summer vacation, and we have a family friend acting as our babysitter. My mom still worked, as I think she hated being a housewife, so she would leave around 7 in the morning. Oftentimes, the babysitter would take a quick little snooze on a reclining chair before we really got up and moving. We weren't really bad kids at all, but we were still too young to be spending all day by ourselves in rural town USA. These were some of the best days I've ever had as I remember them. We had a big satellite dish that would physically point to a different position in the sky when we wanted to change the channel. MTV was big back then and pretty much only played music videos during the day, so between that and the radio when outside we were set. We didn't have a lot of friends nearby as we were on the edge of our school district and our closest neighbor was about half a mile away. Think big farming area. One day, my sister and I was playing in the pool together, as we pretty much did every day. What kid in a hot summer wouldn't? We did the usual games like Marco Polo, seeing how long we could keep a ball in the air or out of the water or hitting it back and forth. Hiding diving toys, breath holding contests, etc. It would sometimes roughhouse a bit too. I would like to pick her up and dunk her like any annoying little brother would do, finding joy in seeing her fret about the state of her hair. But in the end, we both knew it was all good fun. While her and our babysitter would tan on the deck, I would go and make chicken fingers for all of us. Honey mustard sauce for me, barbecue for them. One time, the cordless phone fell in. I saw the green fuzzy outline while coming out with lunch, and dove in to try and save it like I was David Hasselhoff, but alas, I am no phone saver. This was our typical everyday behavior. One day, however, while my sister and I were splashing and dunking at each other, I moved behind her and held onto her, as if hugging her from behind to do a suplex-type dunk when I feel a very odd sensation in my penis. It felt very fluttering and became enlarged, hard, and felt very sensitive. Obviously, this is an erection, but 6 or 7-year-old me didn't have the concept of erections introduced to him yet. When I picked her up to dunk her down, my hard penis rubbed up against the small of her lower back. It felt very good, and I wanted to do it again. So I did, this time taking extra little while suspending her in the air to have a little more of her weight resting on it. This felt better. I don't think she knew what was going on, although I can't imagine she didn't feel my little prepubescent boner rubbing against her. It wasn't as if I stabbed her with it. It was running more parallel to the small of her back. She got off and dried off, changed the radio station, and started tanning. I made chicken fingers, and we went on with our day. We behaved as if nothing had happened, but in reality, I think we were just too young to understand what had just happened. I did do this exact same thing on several other isolated occasions, however. And it wasn't until I discovered one of my father's VHS pornos later on in that summer that I discovered what that thing happening down there was for. An interesting side note, in one of the videos, a man is pleasuring himself. I mimicked this action, and, of course, it felt really good. I kept doing this, and it kept feeling better, until I had an orgasm. I was too young for any semen to develop, but the unsuspecting shock and surprise that came out from that made me avoid orgasms for the first few years I would masturbate. I would go right up until the brink of it and just stop. I was probably the youngest member of the tantric sex club, and I did it all unintentionally. Fast forward to next summer. It is her birthday, and she is having a sleepover party. There's about 6 girls she had over, and my mom would always let me have one of my buddies come over and keep me company. It is early evening. I'm guessing around 10, as the sun had fully set and it was dark out. We are doing our thing upstairs, and the girls are playing outside in the pool or on the trampoline. My friend got the idea to spy on them, so we sneak out. I remember the rush I got from breaking the only rule of leave us alone, a big sister and her friends would tell her dweeby little brother. But we were breaking the rule, and it was totally awesome of us. We looked out the window in my parents' room, as it had the best view of our backyard. I don't remember what they were doing. I think in the living room that didn't have a view from outside. We see them all around the trampoline, some laying down as others would try and bounce them higher and higher. I knew what to do. We went downstairs and snuck through the garage. The side door from our garage led outside, and we went to the backyard and covertly went under the deck of the pool that had just enough room for a young boy if you crouch over. We watched through the small holes in the lattice that formed in the lower deck wall. We were completely hidden. Still on the rush from doing something we weren't supposed to be doing, my breath was a little rapid. My friend tells me to be calm and be cool. I quickly and quietly hold it in, and I kid you not, after about 30 seconds of being down there, one of my sister friends took her top off. These were all still very young, very underdeveloped girls, so there weren't much there. But I remember actually seeing a little budding breasts. Another girl takes her top off. Another. Soon, bottoms and tops are all coming off. Until we have 7 preteen girls, completely naked, jumping on and around the trampoline. My friend's lower jaw drops, completely overstimulated by the confusion of what is going on. I find my sister. She is on the ground and is jumping down as if there wasn't any room on the trampoline. I barely look at her body. Instead, I look at her face, and all I can see is confusion and unwillingness on her expression. I can tell that she doesn't want to do this, but doesn't want to be the odd person out. All I could feel was sadness for her, and had to feign happiness to my friend. When, after the show, that was only about 30 seconds long, stopped, when my friends and I went back upstairs with him recalling the events with such excitement all along the way. This was my first experience with peer pressure, and I think it's a major factor in why I never tried drugs and alcohol until I was ready to experience them for myself and not at the urging of my classmates. Shortly after this is when things started to get a little weirder for me. I was becoming a little more in tune with my sexual surroundings, but I was by no means mature. I'm probably 11 in this time period, with my sister 13. We went school shopping, as we would always do before class started. My new shoes of that year were Reebok, and I was excited for them. Everything else about school shopping was usual misery for me. It would be hot, I would be tired, and I quite honestly didn't give a single care over the color of my folders, and such that my sister would analyze the degree matching a scientific peer review. This time, however, there was a new twist on things. My mom takes us into the girls' clothes department. No big deal for me, I've been dragged there many times. We go into the underwear department. I feel a little awkward about it, but again, I've been there so many times, so I just behave like how any grown man behaves in Victoria's Secret. Instead of the usual underwear like the underwear I wear, my mom and my sister started looking at bras. I had seen my mother in them a lot of times and never gave much thought, until I saw my sister holding one up and examining it. I had never really looked at her in any other way, other than my sister up until this point, even with the previous events happening. They were all innocent, and honestly, beyond my control. I didn't know they were weird until reflecting on them. My sister selects a bra. We buy our items, and we head home. I had trouble sleeping that night. I remember it being 2:30 in the morning, and it was one of those hot, sticky nights that I couldn't get comfortable in. The fan by my bed did nothing. I decided to get up and get a glass of water. Our home had wood flooring that creaked, and all of our bedrooms were by each other. Whenever I would leave at night, I would step very lightly and avoided all the creaky areas, as to not wake anybody up out of consideration. As I exit my room, I look into my sister's adjacent bedroom. She was always a very sound sleeper. I once put her entire hand in a glass of water, trying to mimic something I saw on TV, and it didn't even faze her. I see her bag of clothes on the floor by her bed. I walk in and quietly take it. There was a slight crinkle of the bag, but she, predictably, was out like a light. I take it into my room, quietly shut the door, and turn on the light. I find her bra, and I'm looking at it. I examine it from side to side, and I became aroused. Uncomfortable in my tight shorts, I take them off, and I am no bottomless, holding my sister's bra, fully aroused. I don't know what made me do this. I reach in the bag again and I look in. I don't really see anything else interesting to me, but upon shifting the clothes in the bag, I feel how soft her new pair of panties were. They were a little shiny and were bright pink. I put them on. They were awesomely comfortable. I lay down in my bed and turned off the light. I looked at the ceiling and examined the shadow formed from the moon through my window, all while gently caressing my erection through my sister's underwear. I took them off after a little while, put everything back in the bag, and quietly put them back in her room. I went back in my bed and quickly fell asleep. I felt a little shame in the morning, but this feeling was overcome by another feeling, the feeling of how good her underwear felt for me. Through the next weeks, I would go into her room at night and rifle through her underwear drawer, trying on a new pair each time. One time, I found a pair that she didn't put in her laundry hamper and decided to wear a dirty pair of her underwear. I felt more close to her. I did this for several more days and eventually just stopped. School had started and I needed to sleep now. Fast forward a year and my father's behavior finally caught up to him. We sold that house and built a new house on my grandfather's farmland. We didn't know my dad had been busted for something illegal, as he had never did any jail time. But we knew we were hurting for money, and our parents were always stressed out. My sister was a freshman in high school, and I was in junior high. I still did all the annoying little brother stuff. My family has pretty big school spirit, and we would always go to football games. I listened in on one of my sister's phone calls, and I hear her and a guy talking. She had told my parents that she was going to go to the game with one of her friends who could drive. This guy was trying to convince her to get a friend to come over and stay for his friend. Confused, I read my sister out to my mom, saying that I think she's having people come over. My mom knew about this boy, and she didn't like him. My mother tells my father, and he has a bright idea to perform a little reconnaissance, as he called it. We tell my sister we are leaving for the football game, and actually, we went to my grandfather's house across the street and had a good view of our house. We wait there for a long time. After probably an hour, we see a car pull up and 3 guys walk in. We wait about 15 minutes and we walk in, me behind my dad. My mom was against this idea and did not join us. The TV was maximum volume, and we see this guy that nobody knew drinking what I know now to be a screwdriver, vodka OJ. He has this oh shit look on his face, and my dad, with a stern finger, point, orders him not to fucking move. He sees her bedroom door closed and knocks. There is no answer. He knocks again harder and again, no answer. He starts pounding on the door, telling her to open the fucking door. In a minute, she yells back, in a voice I can tell is holding back tears. After a few more minutes of this, she finally opens. Boy inside, condom on the floor, beer on the nightstand. This particular story goes on much longer, but this was the first time I've ever looked at my sister this way. It blew my mind that she was having sex, and this was really the beginning of my awareness that our family was degrading. My dad would go on more reconnaissance missions, as he no longer trusted her. She would repeatedly validate his need to do this with her equally as untrustworthy behavior in life. She fell into the wrong crowd. My father fell into a world of distrust and paranoia, and my mother and I would just kind of be in the background. I don't want to make it sound like this has some terrible effect on me. I had my own stuff going on at this point, and I honestly didn't care all too much. The sister I had grown to love and grew up with was way beyond removed from this current embodiment, and I had more fun playing video games than concerning myself with her problems. After a year of this, my sister wants a fresh start and goes to a neighboring high school open enrolling. The next school year, I was in 8th grade and was the most senior level student at the junior high, so we all had a bit of arrogance to us. I started to become increasingly attracted to girls, and my hormones were really taking over. I probably masturbated 4 or 5 times a day on average. We did not have the internet yet, so I was left with my imagination and my father's porn mags that I found in his office that I would take caution to replace in the exact same order as I had found them. As the months rolled by, I would become increasingly more sexually frustrated and increasingly bored by the lack of new material. I remembered those summer nights I would take my sister's underwear. What was originally born out of curiosity and possibly a misguided effort of sibling bonding turned into an act purely out of sexual lust and desire. I would often take and wear her underwear, which had changed to the thong variety almost exclusively, aside from the period panties. I loved the feel of them on my erection, and I would frequently wear them to bed overnight and masturbate into. I even had my favorite pair that I hid from her, never to return. I threw them away when it came time for us to move out, but that is just jumping ahead. I no longer saw her as the cool big sister I looked up to. I wanted to be more like. I now saw her as a slutty bitch big sister that was putting a strain on our family. I blame her and not our father, who ultimately was the primary source of our conflict in that regard. And I honestly hated her for it. I hated her, but I was horny for her. It didn't take long for her new school to fall right back into the situation as the old school. Only this time, the guys were older and bigger losers. She could drive now, so there was even less control on her, and I was long past giving a second thought to her actions. The only thing I was particularly interested in was her underwear. This fetish quickly developed into a preference for the used variety, paralleling my younger self. That which I found the more odoriferous the better. I took a particular liking to ejaculating right into the crotch area where her vagina would rest. I would then wash them off and throw them into the used laundry in the basement. I justified it as it wasn't her that turned me on, it was a vagina that was turning me on. I wanted more than just anything to have sex at this point, and this was the most available outlet for me. Is this justification true? I have no idea. Surprisingly, the next year, her behavior turned around. She got put on antidepressants and was dating a boy that my family actually approved of. He was good looking, came from a family with money, played golf. I guess that's a type of man my dad would date. One thing about them though is they loved sex. They would have sex all the time, multiple times a day with our parents right in the house even. They figured that she was probably old enough now, especially after all her mishaps earlier on, and there was no real harm in it as long as they were safe. So when her moans from her bedroom in the basement would resonate through the house, we would turn up the TV and pretend it wasn't happening. This only fueled my perversion more, and it was more the same for me. One time, they were sitting on the couch together with me in the reclining chair adjacent to them. My sister had just gotten out of the shower and was in her robe. For some inexplicable reason, my boyfriend calls my name. As I look over, he lifts up her robe, exposing her hairy vagina to me. She had a surprised look and slapped his arm away playfully. I sheepishly just sat there and went back to watching whatever was on TV at that point. I didn't know what else to do. It didn't look like the vaginas I saw in the magazines, as this one was unkempt, but it still looked great and aroused me nonetheless. I masturbated to that 3 times that night, back to back to back, with no time to recharge. My hormones were off the charts. I used this image as my primary masturbatory source for many months after this, until one day, again they were on the same couch and were doing the usual boyfriend-girlfriend puppy love playful stuff, when she tackled him, knocking him over. He was a much bigger person than she was, so she really had to contort her body in a weird way. This caused her short shorts to shift around her one thigh, exposing her crotch. She wasn't wearing underwear, and I got a view of this new and improved vagina with a racing stripe that matched what I saw in the magazines. This became my new primary. After a while, however, I became dissatisfied with my mental images, and I required more. I wanted to see the real thing again, so I started spying on her. In one of the previous fights she had with my parents, her bedroom door was slammed shut. This caused the finished molding to become loose at the nails and gave about a half-inch gap between the frame and the door. I used this to spy on her and frequently acquire new images to use throughout the day for masturbation. We had the internet at this point, but it wasn't as if tube-like websites were up and running. It was still hard to get anything beyond a slow image on Dawa. I would use this, but it was never the same. It was almost as if the taboo nature of what I was doing was the big thrill. By this time, her and her boyfriend broke up, and she went back to her old ways. She suddenly became more antisocial, and tried to kill herself one time by taking a bunch of pills and going to sleep. She woke the house up vomiting. My parents took her to the hospital, where she had her stomach pumped, and later she had to stay home at some facility where she went through some therapy and was under surveillance. All this time I was still doing my thing, taking her underwear and whatnot. I found a pair of sex handcuffs under her bed. That gave me one of the hardest erections I've ever had. I began imagining her in bondage-like situations. While she was still in hospital, my mom came across the hall and saw me in her room. I had been looking for more perverted paraphernalia to calm my sexual desires. My mom asked what I was doing. I teared up a bit and acted like I missed her and just wanted her home. She called me such a good boy for holding back her own tears. This is one of my shameful moments. Anyways, she comes back, has periods on and off the crazy sister. All while I'm still spying and taking her undies. I don't even really try to get a girlfriend of my own. I was thrilled in my own world. I became increasingly good at spying, and a very good method. Late at night when she had the bedroom light on, I would like to sit out on the porch and watch her. She couldn't see anything, blinded by her own bedroom, so it was like going from the air channels to Blu-ray in terms of quality. My favorite experience prior to this was when she accidentally left the bathroom door open, cracked, and got a full view of her shaving her vagina. This quickly fell to the middle teens of favorite moments, and yes, I would often rank them as they cycled through my head as I masturbated to them. Her boyfriend at the time was not allowed into the house as he was a total loser. She convinced them to let him into her room to study for his finals exams, so he could graduate high school. This was, I think, his third senior year, and if he failed, he wouldn't be let back in. They allowed it, much to her delight, and they went into their room to study. Once nighttime fell, I went out to my usual spot outside the bedroom window and observed them. They were studying on the floor, and it was boring to watch. But as she was the object of my obsession, I stayed the course. After about 90 minutes, he pops up and turns off the light. I can't see anything that well, but from the scattered lighting I can make out silhouettes. Not to get too graphic, I see them have sex for 4 quick minutes, and I became overwhelmed with jealousy. One thing that I have just realized now, by retelling all of this, is that when he came inside of her. So when I would wear, and up to this point not mention, lick her underwear, I was really tasting their sex aftermath. Oh joy. Anyways, he graduates, she graduates, time skips ahead about a month, and she's going on a senior trip with some of her friends to one of the beaches. I spy on her trying all the new sexier clothes she brought for the trip. It was seriously like a 2-hour-long private show. It was the time of my life. She leaves, and come back with a tan and a nipple ring. Of course I noticed this by spying on her when she got back. This was like throwing a box of fireworks in a wildfire. I was already reeling from the private show, but this introduced a whole new level of feelings. I had to see them again. I had to touch them. And this is exactly what I did. Knowing she was a tremendously heavy sleeper, I had planned on filling her up at night over the shirt very lightly. One night, she fell asleep on the couch. It was a floated couch setup, which meant I could hide behind it and walk into the kitchen should she wake up and try to play it cool. So I went over, probably 3 in the morning, and gently rested my hand on her breast. It felt off. It felt muffled, like I was wearing gloves and almost hollow. Disappointed by this, I slowly reached up her shirt to feel exactly what I was feeling. It was her bra that had partially slipped down. I did not feel breasts at all. I reached my hand up a little further and a little more down towards the cushion, and I feel them. The texture was great. The firmness was great. The rings were everything I imagined them to be. I took my hand out and rested it on her athletic butt. Let it rest there for about a minute, then went back to my bedroom and went to sleep after excessive masturbation. This behavior, while far and few between, continued for about 3 or 4 more years after this. My parents eventually divorced and we moved out. I went to college. My mother died. No more opportunities presented itself. I felt out of this deep desire. I met a girl and got married. She got married. And most importantly, I never got caught. I always feel bad about my behavior, and now I've had about 5 years of removal from it. I know how disturbed this behavior is. I don't know if I was just overcome with hormones and latch onto the first thing available, or if I was just obsessed with her. All I do know is, though, after spending the weekend with her, we are on good terms and there were no impure thoughts. I decided that I have to make sure all these thoughts are gone. The shame factor has always been a good driving force and learning tool for me. You see, my sister is about to give birth to a girl, and the last thing I want to do is carry this sick behavior onto another innocent person. This time, the person has no possible way to defend herself. I still masturbate about 2 to 3 times a day, most days. Huge sex drive, I guess. And if I don't catch myself, I will occasionally think back to those peeping days and use that as material. I don't know if I'm a pedophile, a phebophile, voyeur, or whatever it may be, but all I know is I'm a pervert. I have done some very sick things, and I wanted to stop for good, not just be on hold. Writing this out has been somewhat therapeutic, and I honestly feel like I'll be okay. If, in the unlikely event, I do develop improper feelings of any sort, I will tell my sister everything and never allow her child to be in my presence. I refuse to allow my disgusting self to harm another person, another innocent person like that. Thank you for your time. Wow, thật là một câu chuyện kỳ lạ. Không biết dùng từ gì khác luôn. Cá nhân mình thì mình thấy là rất nhiều những người trẻ tuổi, con trai, nói thẳng là con trai tuổi vị thành niên ấy, tầm tuổi đấy thường sẽ có những sự tò mò, đôi khi tò mò hơi quá về giới tính và cả những trò đấy nữa. Mình sẽ không muốn nói là cá nhân mình cũng như thế, nhưng mà mình hiểu điều đó. Cho nên về một cách nhất định thì việc chủ thớt của bài viết này cũng tự cảm thấy có lỗi và cũng tự biết cách tránh đặt bản thân mình ra xa khỏi điều đó. Cũng có thể nói là một hành động khá là đáng khen. Và cho dù thật sự việc làm điều đó rất là bệnh hoạn, bởi vì người đến tận năm lên cấp 3, người đó vẫn tiếp tục làm những hành động như vậy. Và người đó nhận thức được tệ nhưng người ta vẫn làm tiếp. Thì mình thấy làm thế là rất khá là tệ, bởi vì họ không kiểm soát được cái thú tính trong người mình. Tuy nhiên sau tất cả thì có vẻ chủ thớt cũng là một con người hiểu biết và cũng biết nhận thức được những cái hành động của mình nó có thể tởm đến cỡ nào. Cho nên đây có thể coi là một bài học để các bạn hiểu là tuổi trẻ chúng ta thể mắc nhiều sai lầm hoặc là có sự tò mò hơi quá. Cái quan trọng là chúng ta phải biết điểm dừng của mình và không được đi quá những chuẩn mực đạo đức và không được đi qua pháp luật nữa. Mình chỉ có đến thế thôi. Cảm ơn bạn đã lắng nghe buổi podcast này của mình, buổi podcast solo đầu tiên.